Welcome friends to the Beaver Dam. Speed is key in this game. It is very, very important. Now the question is, who needs to be fast? And here's the problem. You have a roster. You might have a 10 million roster. You might have a 14 million roster. If you have a 14 million roster, I really hope you're not watching this video because, hey, you should know how to use your mods. But regardless, whether you have a 2 million, a 4 million, a 6 million, or a 10 million roster, you are going to end up having a different roster than what I have. You know, if we look at Arnold's free-to-play account, it doesn't look like this account because he actually is pushing on a track that makes sense. Am I pushing on a track that makes sense? Kind of. But, you know, because of content creation, I do have to go off the track that makes sense just a wee bit. And so, you know, he's pushing more Galactic Legends. He's got Profundity in his roster already. So even his roster is different mine, even though we took the same route starting out. You know, I bought the Lightspeed bundles. He went straight for Jabba. Like, there's some differences in our rosters that are fairly obvious. And so because of that, I can't sit there and be like, here is a list, because I could very easily go through and I could go, okay, right here, this is a team right here. You want First Order Officer and Hux fast. First Order Officer slightly faster than Hux. You know, you've got this team right here. You're going to want Darth Revan fast. He's kind of the operative person on this team. Right here, if you can get a fast Canderous order, it's fairly important. You just need a solidly fast Canderous, not anything too crazy, and then Maul needs to be as fast as possible. You know, General Grievous, it doesn't actually matter too much for this team. You don't need a ton of speed. You can throw speed on here if you want. Newt Gunray would probably be the one that I'd put the most speed on in here. You know, right here, we could go in and say so I could go through and tell you on every team that I have who should be fastest in this team, but I instead want to give you some general rules on who should be fast, because for you might not have Imperial Troopers. Maybe you have Executor and you have that Relic 8 Piet, but you don't have the rest of the Imperial Troopers. Is there a point to getting your Piet fast? Not particularly, not unless you have an Empire team, and even then it's probably more important to have a couple of the other people on the team fast. Like for instance, if you're using a Vader solo, you want that Vader fast, because Piet being the fastest is important on an Imperial Trooper team. So we're going to sit here and we're going to talk a little bit about this. So obviously, to start off, obviously, these should be your most well-modded characters in the game. It's just how it works. Galactic Legends should be your fastest characters in the game. Now, how fast they need to be vastly depends on the Galactic Legend. For instance, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, you're trying to put as much speed as you can in him. Versus Rey, you're trying to hit a couple values as well as get a bare minimum speed. Same with Sith Eternal. You're trying to have as much health as possible while still having speed. Jedi Master Luke, have as much protection as possible while still having speed. So it just kind of depends person to person, but your best mods should always go on your Galactic Legends. That doesn't mean they should be your fastest character, fastest like speeds overall. So like for instance on my JML, you know, an additional 159 is not my best speed I have in this roster, but it is good speed for him, as well as giving us the protection that we want on that character. So as my best protection mods I have in my roster go to Jedi Master Luke. So that being said, we're going to go away from our Galactic Legends and we're going to talk about general characters. And so the problem is your roster is different than mine. My roster is different than yours. And so how do you know who to get fast? Because if I were to go here, I could very easily tell you, hey, look, these are the people that I get fast. But you're going to have to look a little bit. You're going to have to think about this. And so what I want you to look at is who pushes turn meter to the team. That's number one. So we're going to give a good example here. We're going to look at this team right here, my silent but deadly team, aka gas. So if you're looking at this team, who pushes turn meter to the whole team? It's Rex. Rex pushes turn meter to the whole team with his form up ability. So dispel debuffs on all allies, grant them tenacity up. Clone trooper allies gain 60% turn meter plus an additional 10% turn meter for each debuff dispelled this way. Other allies gain half these amounts. So this is the character that pushes turn meter. And so since we have a character that pushes turn meter, we're going to want him fast. Additionally, he has other things to make his allies faster, which is super, super nice. But because of that turn meter push, you want him to be fast, because if he takes first turn, he makes your whole team take first turn, and that's what's important. And so you want Rex to be your fastest character on your 501st team. And so taking a look at your different teams, you can very easily see this as you go along. In certain teams, you'll be able to find the person that gives out that wonderful, wonderful turn meter. For instance, Captain Rex in the Phoenix team, his suppressing fire gives Clone Trooper and Phoenix allies 5% turn meter for each debuff. Now he applies, what is it, tenacity down in days, so that is 3 debuffs with the offense down, so that's 75% turn meter to all allies. Pretty dang good. So you're looking at characters in teams who are going to push turn meter to the rest of the team. And then the next portion you're going to look at is control. And so the opposite side of gaining turn meter is losing turn meter. Now this one's a little bit more niche, and it only comes into factors in certain areas, but any character that can control the battlefield is what you're looking for. So the reason I say it's niche is because a lot of teams that are like high end typically have that one person who needs to be fast. You know, you look at your team with Starkiller, you're gonna have Mara Jade really, really fast because she pushes a whole bunch of turn meter in the team, causes assists, all kinds of fun stuff. So you usually can choose that person, and a lot of the times they also control the battlefield. Like, she gives shock to the enemy so they can't do anything. But there'll be times where there's characters that are kind of different, honestly, where they control the battlefield, and specifically that comes down to are things like Darth Revan. Darth Revan doesn't have any turn meter mechanics himself specifically, but what he does have is fear, which makes enemies miss turns. It increases their cooldowns. It's so incredibly good. And so having a fast Darth Revan on a Darth Revan team or on a Malgus team, whatever you end up using depending on your GP, it's going to be incredibly important, because if you can control the field, you can control the battle. If you control the battle, you win. So, you know, maybe they have a fast Piet. Well, if your Darth Revan's faster than their Piet, you're going to win every time. And so having whoever the character is that controls the enemy fast is very, very important. So let's give you guys another example of this. So if we were to go over here and we were looking at our Dash Rendar squad. Now Dash Rendar doesn't necessarily give a ton of turn meter off of his abilities, but you want him to be the fastest, and the reason being is because this ability right here, not only does it slap like a freight train, absolutely decimate the enemy, but on top of that, it dispels stealth and dazes, which is incredible. That daze shuts down so many turn meter teams. So like, you know, you're sitting there and you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing good. You know, I'm running a turn meter train. If Dash takes a turn, you're immediately screwed, because turn meter trains shut down them instant they get daze. And so now you gotta find a way to either buy yourself enough time to be able to get your dazes off of your characters, or, you know, take a moment and get a cleanse in there somewhere, and maybe your team doesn't have a cleanse. And so a daze can absolutely destroy a turn meter train team, or just a team in general, because so many teams rely on turn meter nowadays. And so there's all kinds of teams like this that are the person that controls the battlefield. Jedi Knight Revan's a special case when it comes to controlling the battlefield. I think this one's very interesting, which is why I want to talk about it. Once again, it's a character that doesn't necessarily gain a bunch of turn meter for his team, but this character removes turn meters from enemies and he passes turn meter around, which is vitally important. So this ability right here, he cleanses and then he swaps turn meter with an ally, and so you can get someone else in that can push things along. The go-to obviously is Jedi Knight Revan and Jedi Knight Luke. Jedi Knight Luke's a very slow character, and so you'll pass it over to him, and Jedi Knight Luke will hit his mass stun and stun the entire enemy team, which will freeze the team. And so it's interesting because it's almost like you're looking at not only who can control the battlefield, but you're also looking at who can make others control the battlefield. So Jedi Knight Revan's kind of a special case and kind of an interesting case when it comes to this. But he still has that control the battlefield of marking targets, increasing cooldowns, giving buff immunity, all that kind of fun stuff. So when you're looking at this kind of thing, you're looking for those people who can either run a turn meter train themselves and get the turn meter train going, or you're going to look for people who can control the field. So looking at whatever team you can, you're going to look at that type of stuff. So, right here, Resistance Hero Finn gets the turn meter train started because he can pass turn meter with his strength of will, and then he can call everyone to assist with his rallying call, and rallying call, you hit some exposes, and all of a sudden the turn meter train is going. And so your Resistance Hero Finn is who you want fast in this team. So just take a look at that kind of thing. And there are exceptions. There are always going to be exceptions. There's teams that don't necessarily need speed, like General Grievous doesn't necessarily need speed. Savage Opress doesn't need speed, and so there's certain exceptions, but they're exactly what we're saying. They are exceptions. They are not the rule. Another exception team is, yes, you want good speeds on a CLS team, but it's not necessarily needs to be one of your fastest teams. You do want a fast Han Solo, though. He does control the field. He has a good stun. He removes turn meter, and then on top of that, this is really, really niche, but you can, when it comes to going Han Solo versus Han Solo, whoever has the faster Han Solo goes first, because shoots first, takes priority over everything except for another Han. So very niche case with Han Solo's, mirror match kind of capabilities. But overall, this doesn't need to be like a blazing fast team. Now, am I saying that you should put no speed on them? Absolutely not. But it's not one of those ones where there's like a clear, like, oh, you need this character 330 speed, versus like Starkiller, where you're like, Mara Jade needs 330 speed, 100%, because she's fast and you want her blazing fast. You want her to outspeed troopers, all kinds of stuff. So you look at your characters and you can 100% see the people that should have speed as you look through, with this idea of who gets the team started and then who controls the other team. Those are the two things you need to ask yourself. Dash Rendar is actually an example of 2 in 1. Dash Rendar, you want to be going first to slow down the other team. He's the control. And then Queel you want just under that, because he's the one that pushes turn meter to the team. And so if you can have them take it in that order, where it's Dash, then Queel, Dash takes his turn, hits that daze on the enemy team, and then Queel takes his turn, pushes turn meter, everyone else gets a turn, and Dash is now halfway to taking another turn again. So absolutely amazing, because this team has 2 in 1. Obviously, this isn't the go-to Dash Rendar team. This is just what I have on hand. But you kind of have a little bit of both in this team. You can see the same thing with our Imperial Troopers. If you look at your Imperial Troopers, you have Admiral Piet as the fastest to push the turn meter to the team. And then you have Moff Gideon to remove turn meter from the other team and keep the control going. And so it's kind of interesting, because you'll find teams that kind of have both sides of that. It's very, very interesting. But yeah, so the only other thing that I want to go over when it comes to who should have speed is anti-galactic legend teams. We are talking about off-meta counters. So, for instance, let's create one right now. One that I just know off of hand, I don't have saved. you, and you. So this is an SLKR counter right here. So, we have this SLKR counter sitting right here. Now, here's the problem with going against GLs. Now, GLs are our best modded characters. We mentioned that at the beginning of the video. If you're looking at an SLKR, specifically my SLKR, we're looking at 577 speed. He can get up to the 590s. Now, that's really, really, really fast. And so there is no way that you are going to beat 590 speed with a non-GL team. There's no way. It's physically impossible, short of some Datacron things we've done in the past. For instance, with the Banecron recently, we were able to get Bane to take more turns than GLs, which is hilarious, and I thought that was a lot of fun. But it required that you were going up against a really beefy GL just to get it to work. Anyways, so with this team, you need to make sure that your team is faster than half the speed of a GL. That's kind of what you're shooting for, and that's what I've modded my old Ben for. There's a reason that I have some solid mods on my old Ben, because old Ben doesn't sound like he's a tank. He's a tank. Why would you throw a whole bunch of speed on him? That's the question. But that's the thing, is because of the fact that you're trying to get more than half, I've taken some time and I've gotten some good speed on him, over 100, which normally is not something that I would do. But with this character, it is. Now, keep in mind, yes, it is only 253, but you have to be keeping in mind all aspects of this counter. If you look here, we got in his leader ability, each Jedi ally gains 5 speed for each other Old Republic and Jedi ally, meaning that currently we have, you know, what is that, 10, 20, 35 additional speed on him. And so currently he is 288, which makes him faster than most SLKRs. Now, is this perfect? No. Am I going to keep working on his mods? Yes. But this is what you're shooting for. So like when I go up with this counter against an SLKR, I'm looking at the SLKR, I'm seeing if he's under the speed threshold that's double of Obi-Wan or Old Ben. So that is kind of what you're looking for when it comes to off-meta counters, because you don't want the GL to be lapping your allies, because if he's lapping your allies, it's going to be much harder to counter. It's something I keep running into with my Traya team. My Traya is fairly slow, and so JML will take 2 turns in the time that Traya takes 1, and that's not good. And so I need to work on my Traya mods. And so this is something that you want to pay attention to on any of your off meta counters. Make sure that they have enough speed that they aren't going to be lapped by a GL, whether that's Bo-Katan Mandalore, whether that's Jedi Knight Revan for the SLKR counter, whether that's your Mara Jade team. You want to make sure that you at least have Star Killer and Mara Jade at that speed where they're going to be able to take 2 turns. It matters less so on them, but it's still very important, because there is a very high turn meter trained team, whereas this is not a turn meter trained team. This is all based off of just being able to take turns. So there's some cases where it goes one way, some cases where it goes the other way, but overall that is the general idea, is when you are trying to counter a GL, always try to make it so that way you can have at least 1 turn for every 2 turns the GL is going to take. Otherwise you might get destroyed, because it's just it's double the power for, you know, what you're doing, which is not good. And if they're even faster, they're going to start lapping you multiple times, and you're just going to die off very, very quickly. A character with no speed, or we'll just take a character at the bottom of my roster. I don't know. Here, Talia, I'm guessing you have like no mods. Yeah. With this character, I have 151 speed, which is essentially 1/4 of what SLKR has. So if you have no speed on your characters, that off meta counter is never going to work, because you're going to have an SLKR that's taking 4 turns before you can take 1. Like, that's insane. So make sure you're at least half the speed. Factor in all of the little side stuff, but make sure you're at least half the speed of whatever GL that you are going against. So those are the 3 things to pay attention to. So number 1, who gets the turn meter train started? Number 2, who controls the field? Number 3 is in off meta counters, make sure that your guys are at least half the speed of the GL you're going up against. So pay attention. Keep in mind all of the stat bonuses from like leadership abilities, that kind of thing, but factor it in and make sure that you have it in the right spot. So hopefully this has helped you guys. I could, once again, I could go through and like show you guys for each team what character should be the fastest, but it's gonna be a waste of my time and honestly your time, because you can always look up things on swago.gg. Please do use swago.gg. It's such a good resource. you don't want to sleep on it. But after all is said and all is done, there's going to be, you know, only so many mods to go around. If you're a 14 million GP roster, sure, everyone's going to be over 300 speed, I hope. But, you know, when it comes to my roster, I can only afford so many fast characters. And so you got to focus down those ones who are going to control the field, who are going to start a turn meter train, and those teams that are going to go up against GLs. So keep an eye out for those characters, work on those characters, and if you're confused, you're struggling, you don't know the priority that you should go for, anything like that, you can always hop into one of our streams. We do roster reviews every time we stream, and we can help you out figuring out who you should up with your mods. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if there's any characters that you think deserve speed above anyone else, I'd love to hear them in the comments section. You know, maybe you think Mara Jade should be the fastest character in our roster. Maybe you think it's Cat, which is an interesting one. I see Cat at the top of people's rosters even pre-JMK. I'm like, interesting. Like, it's a good character to have at very high speeds, but very interesting. So let me know who you think deserves the most speed in the game, regardless of GLs. GLs are their own thing. Obviously, you throw as much speed as you can at them, but non-GL character, tell me who you think should be the fastest in the game to your account. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.